Hello YouTube. Welcome back. This is Bela Mage again. And this is our first character we've made not following any build guides. And I've been really enjoying it. So, our next Torchlight character, in the background here, you're seeing a Ring of Ice Gemma. Now, this was done completely free to play. We haven't got any of the paid things. We didn't give them any money until, I think, midday-ish yesterday. I decided to buy the battle pass because I liked the game enough, but everything up to here was done completely free to play, so this can be done by anybody. The total price of the build you're seeing in the background, I only spent about 70 fee to get it where it is now. However, I did drop a ring on the floor that was worth about 200. That ring is absolutely not mandatory. We will get into it. I dropped it on the floor. I might as well use it. But if we're going to include that, we're looking at 270 fee. But realistically, you can get this running for 50 to 70 and have it running smooth, like really well at tier 7s. I have not branched into tier 8s yet. So I have to say, this is incredibly fun. This is one of the most fun builds I've played in any ARPG. As you can see, the clear is phenomenal. The speed is just great. I'm in love with every single part of it. What I will say when we jump in game and go through my character is that I want to be very specific. This is not a build guide. I do not know that I am doing everything the correct way. I am too new to this game to be providing you with build guides. That being said, I'm still going to go over my whole character so everyone can see what I was doing and why I made those decisions, but do not take my word as gospel. I do not know enough about this game to be making build guides yet. So plenty of questions, plenty of people have been asking me what's up, so we're going to go through the character so that you can all see it. All right, let's jump in game. Alright, so here it is in game. This is my Ring of Ice Gemma. This has been incredibly fun. So, jumping in. Ring of Ice is our main skill. It is basically Ice Nova from PoE. You'll have to forgive me if I make a bunch of comparisons to PoE, because that's what I'm super familiar with. This is the gem setup. I've tested pretty much everything. This seems to be the best. What I will say is early on, when I wasn't very geared, crit strike damage increase wasn't that good, and efficient cast was significantly better. And even earlier than that, when I wasn't even trying to be crit at all, and I didn't have enough cast speed and spell burst recovery, even psychic burst wasn't that good to begin with. And so really, really early, I was using controlled spell, because that's basically controlled destruction. That is, I'm not crit yet. So when you start out, if you decide you want to do this character, take out the psychic burst, put in the controlled and efficient casting, and that was the best setup. If you are leveling, Cold Pen ended up being my last link. It was very nice. It's a very good link, but that's my last one. So that's, if you've only got 5 points, drop that. Our one weakness in the build, I have practically no recovery right now, so I am still running a compound potion for if I do take damage, which isn't that often because I do annihilate everything, but there is basically no recovery to speak of. So we have a potion. Frigid Transmission here might be the best movement skill I've ever seen in any game. It is so zippy. The biggest part is the base here. It refreshes the skill's cooldown upon inflicting freeze in any situation, which means it could inflict the freeze, but also Ring of Ice could inflict the freeze, and that recovers the cooldown. So cooldown reduction and magic dash are pretty much mandatory. This gives you an extra charge, of which you can refresh both charges by freezing one pack of mob, and reduced cooldown just so that you can move quicker. Everything extra on this is a little bit fluff. It's a little bit extra. It's good, but in order, quick mobility just gives me some attack and cast speed and some cooldown recovery. Very good. Absolutely. This one, least important. All it does is apply this sort of It's not really a curse, just this mark to an enemy, which is just 40% critical strike damage taken. So it's basically 40 more crit multi. It's meaningful. It's worth doing. It's the least important link in the setup. So when you don't have enough energy, we're dropping that one off. The rest of those, pretty damn important. We've got Fixate here, which is just a mark to give us chance to deal double damage. Again, I had a lot of energy, so I've buffed it up, but this is all pretty much in order. You want these two, pretty much mandatory. This one's pretty cheap, so we want one more. Extend duration, make that last longer. And then if you have extra energy, then we'll put cooldown recovery on it as well. But that one's the least important part, so you can drop cooldown recovery while we're short on energy. Mana Boil, also pretty cheap. This is just permanently grants 15% additional spell damage. Drains a bit of your mana, but we've got enough mana regen that we don't have to worry about that. And these are just buff effect things. So, on to my auras. This is probably my least important setup, though I do think it's still pretty important, but it's my least important. So Euphoria on hit just makes a buff happen that you link with it whenever you hit any elite mob. So any rare or boss is an elite, which gives us Secret Origin Unleash, which is 20.5% additional cast speed and 3% cast speed for each stack of Focus Blessing, which we have 10 stacks. If you copy this, you'll probably have 8, not 10, but that's a lot of cast speed. Very nice. And extend duration just to make that last a little bit longer. And then I have Precise Magic Source. I did have just regular Magic Source for a while until I realized it was only like 3C to get the precise one, and I was like, might as well. Not important to have the precise version. It was just very, very cheap. This is just our mana regen. We do have some mana issues to overcome. We use quite a lot of mana, so we did need to invest a little bit in the mana regen. Most of it was just this and our focus blessings. That fixed everything. We have a curse on hit. Again, precise curse on hit was just super cheap. It is not important that you get precise, but it is a little bit more curse effect, and it was very, very cheap. So that, Biting Cold, Abysmal Hatred for more curse effect. That's it. And then our aura setup, Frigid Domain, Elemental Amplification. So 28.5% additional elemental damage and some pen. And then 31% additional cold damage and some pen. Again, I just got the precise auras because they were very, very cheap. You do not need to have the precise auras. It's all just a little tiny bit of power here and there that all stack together and are worth getting as soon as you've got the spare fee to do so. But they were very cheap. That's why I got them. So that was great. All right, moving over to talents. I've seen a lot of people taking Warlock down here, and they might be right in the end game, but I could not figure out how to make that better than Magister. So just pointing that out right to begin with, we're going with Magister. So we'll look at the front. Everything here is going to be as you expect. We're going to get our spell burst charges, and we're going to get the 20% additional cold and fire damage. We could pick either one of these, either Insight or Burning Touch. The important thing for me was getting a very, very cheap Insight over here. This only cost me 8 fee, and it was 18% damage, some cooldown recovery, and it gave me one of those, I'm going to call them notables because I don't know what their real name is, but that gives me the Insight here. So I've got that as well as this. So we could pick either one, and we could pick up a slate for the other one. Doesn't matter which way we do that. That's the way I did it because it was the cheapest way. The only important bits here, a bunch of spell damage, +1 spell level, and +1 max focus. All very important. Everything else in this thing is exactly what you would expect. It's just damage, cast speed, crit, area, bit of sealed mana, and then the important stuff up the end. What I will say is that surprisingly, very surprisingly, this +1 skill level is the least important of all of these end nodes. It's the one you'll get last. The max spell burst speed, too important. And I am stacking focus blessings, and that is worth more than +1 skill level is, at least as far as my testing went on the dummy. Again, not a guide. I don't know that all of these things are true. These are just what I've figured out within the few days of playing. So, moving on. Elementalist. Elementalist is really good. We've got, we deal all 3 kinds of damage. So this is basically just 20% more damage. We have a tiny bit of added lightning. So we do that. We do a cold skill. We have a tiny bit of added fire. We deal all 3 damage types. So that's fine. And then over here, we always inflict a ton of elemental ailments. So this is just 25% additional damage against enemies that have elemental ailments, as well as more chance to inflict, which we don't need the chance to inflict. We just like the 25% additional damage. So that's real cool. Real important at the end here. Here's all the flat that you need to be able to put an elemental ailment on. That's great. +1 cold. Mostly the elementalist is about this and this. These are very good. So least exciting is elementalist. It's the least interesting, but it's more than enough power to be worth it. And then I went with Magister. So Magister giving me a focus blessing and 3% additional spell damage per focused blessing. Again, stacking focus blessings as much as we possibly can. So made sense to go into there. We also get play safe, which was incredibly good. This is the change that made it suddenly feel a million times better. Was changing over from Warlock to Magister to get this play safe. So 100% of the increases and decreases to cast speed also apply to spell burst charge speed. Now it's minus 50% additional damage for skills that are not cast by spell burst, but once you get this and you've got cast speed, we're now pretty much spell bursting almost all the time. It's not quite enough. If I can stand perfectly still on top of a mob with all my buffs up, I can actually cast so fast that I spell burst once and then cast a normal skill once, and then spell burst once and then cast a normal skill once. Truth is, still a damage up anyway, even if you do that, and actually in reality, you don't quite often all the time get to stand perfectly still with every single buff up to get this like magic scenario of perfect safety. We don't really see that, so rarely even happens, but even when it does, it's still a damage up anyway. So absolutely fantastic. Important things out of here is +1 spell burst and critical strike damage per focused blessing owned. Again, I own 10, so this is 50 crit multi for one node, which is insane. We can deal with a bit of mana cost in here. Everything else is pretty obvious. Skill radius, crit, cast speed, damage when we have to. All right. Everybody quickly ignore the fact that I'm in a different shirt. This is definitely not a different day, and I definitely didn't forget to look over all of the gear and then get yelled at by my editor. But in that Gemma build is the gear we're wearing. So this is all pretty basic stuff because still pretty new to the game. I bought this with +1 cold and life and just locked them and rolled the rest. Bought this with some res, locked it, rolled the rest. I think I just bought these one as they were. Crafted this. This is my bad weapon. This is a pretty low tier weapon. You can absolutely make a weapon like this. This weapon's a little bit better. No plus levels on it, but it does have the spell burst. 31% additional damage from spell burst skills, so that's pretty good. With crit rating, spell damage, and just a little bit of flat. That's pretty good. The big items that I have, not this one, this is just where we get our fever. This is actually super important. This fever effect corruption, you should definitely look for. It's a little bit of extra crit, and it cost me like 2 fee extra for some reason. That was all. So if it's still super cheap, get it, but it's not important. And then we have the Robe of Judgment for the chest. which is was also pretty cheap. I think this thing is still going very, very cheap. Yeah, 1 or 2 fee, and it just gives me inflicts 10 frostbite plus 1 cold. So that's super nice. This is the only really big ticket item that I have, which dropped on the floor. I didn't buy it, so I actually have no idea how much it's worth. It dropped on the floor. It gave me 2 max focus blessing, which is huge. You would only have 8 instead of 10 without it. We're going to find out right now how much it's worth. Probably more than the rest of the build combined. Yup. Definitely worth more than the rest of the build combined. Absolutely not necessary at all. What I was using up until then, I believe I still have here. Maybe I don't. I was using a ring that had 100 cold damage to frozen enemies on it, and it did quite well. It did nearly as much as this one. So definitely don't worry about buying this if you're copying it. Otherwise, that's the gear. Now, this is the most important thing in the whole build. It is absolutely insane how much the statue of the god, this little Tetris panel here, actually affects your build. You think of it, I thought of it as if it was just it's just another part of my skill tree, but the reality is that I do about 70 million DPS, and if I clear off the statue of the god and I don't have it anymore, I do about 10 million DPS. So if you're wondering, this probably goes for all characters, I imagine. Still too new to know that for sure, but this probably goes for all characters. If you're really struggling and you feel like you've put a lot of time into your character trying to figure out what's going on, it's probably this tree. It's probably this. This is where a stupid amount of power comes from. So, our most important thing, this one was cheap as anything, is great. Get something with a good notable on it. There are a ton of notables to pick from. It doesn't have to be this one, but you want to find a notable that's going to give you 20 to 30% additional damage, right? You're looking for just a ton of raw power, very cheap, off these nodes. You can only have one of them, so other than that, we move on. So I got this one up the top. It's just crit, life, a little bit of regen. Not that important. This one here helps me stack focused blessings. This is actually quite cheap, this one. I think I paid like 15 fee for this, and it helps me stack my focus blessings, and it again gives me another 50 crit multi because I got 10 focus blessings. So we've got that stat there as well. Moving down the bottom, this one I found and crafted myself, so I haven't priced it, but it's gross. So we've got own 1 additional stack of focus blessing, so that's +1 focus blessing. 10% chance to gain a stack when you frostbite a target. Cool, more generation. And I actually got +1 cold on it when I was imbuing or branding it or whatever you call it. So that was great. What I will say, max divinity effect 1. When you're looking at stuff like this, anything that says max divinity effect 1, you can only have one of those exact stat on your board. So this is own 1 additional stack of focus blessing. That's great, but I get more focus blessing from a different wording talent. This is the same thing. Max focus blessing stacks +1. Effectively the same thing. I'm getting 1 max focus blessing for each one, but the wording is different. So this is a different modifier. So I can also have max divinity effect 1. I can also have 1 of these. So this one's, again, stacking the blessing, a little bit of spell damage, crit, elemental damage. The most important part of it was the focused blessing. So that's great. And then over here, we have 25% spell burst charge speed, a little bit of life, a little bit of damage. And that's it. So that is that board. It is absolutely amazing. The only reason I'm going to bring up this wheel is because people ask about it. I haven't managed to make this important enough to warrant caring about in a build guide yet. Maybe I'm not utilizing this enough yet. So we'll see. So I'm actually using a little bit of elemental resistance here to cap, because that's just how my gear is. With this dude, I'm also using this mana regen, which I tried to take out, and it was actually a little bit of a struggle. Up here we got movement speed. This is mostly damage, although we have picked up a bunch of quant wheels now. We're in the process of pulling power out of this and just putting it into quant as quickly as I can afford it. Got most of the quant wheel down the bottom here. Quant, 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 quant. We just like quant. Anyone who knows me from PoE knows any chance I have to put quantity into a build, I'm going to do that. I don't want to sacrifice all my power to put quantity in, so I start not caring about it. Get the build functioning, get it moving quickly, get it good, and then start pulling power out of the packed area and changing it into quant in little bits so that it doesn't affect my clear speed or my ability to run maps really quick. And ideally, as you get more and more gear, I will turn this whole thing into quant. This whole board will just be quant everywhere. That's my goal. I don't know if it's a good goal. I don't know if that's what everyone else does, but that's what I want to do. It's just slowly move it over to quant everywhere. All right. I think that is everything. Oh, it's not. It's not. There's one more thing. Okay. This is the bit that I'm a bit iffy about. Please take this with a grain of salt, because we don't have a path of building to look at, and I can't figure out what's good and what's not. So, in this thing, I've decided to go for this thing to give us a bunch of crit strike rating and 90 crit damage against ignited enemies, but I couldn't find a way to ignite. So I had to get one with adds some skill base damage to base ignite damage, and now I can ignite. This means I've given up, what are they called? Fusion energy. I can get like 3 or 4 fusion energy on this piece instead. And I just don't know if that's going to be better, because I haven't been able to find another way to put base ignite on. So if I do fusion energy, it ends up replacing this mod, which is 150 crit rating and 90 crit multi, which is an insane amount of damage. I don't know how much a few fusion energy is worth. It might be that it's better. I don't know. However, over here, damage, max life and damage. This is probably my worst one because the damage is low. And then this one, max life and damage, much better damage, much less max life. I'm honestly somewhat concerned that I might be neglecting this section of my tree. Unsure. And this is the way we've gone with that. Fusion energy, ice, radiance. What do we got? Ice, fire, embrace, restless ice, fire, glacial flames, and extreme fusion. So that's how I've gone with that. I believe that that is everything. So, if I've missed anything about this character, let us know in the comments. Still pretty new to Torchlight. Hopefully I've covered everything everybody needs to know. And I will see everybody next time. Goodbye. Okay. Not 100% sure. But I'm going to do some dummy without me on the screen, just in case you need that footage for anything, or if it's something people care about. Like having, or seeing, or maybe a screenshot of. I have no idea, to be honest. Yeah, I have to get my field rating up. Okay, now it is. Okay, what are you doing? I was doing 70 mil before. Oh, did I forget to press mana boil? Hang on. Hang on. There we go. I did. I had forgotten to press matter boil. Can usually maintain around 70 mil here. Alright, well, there's a little bit of a dummy. I don't know if you'll need that to cut it in anywhere, or perhaps just a screenshot of it when I'm talking about damage. I don't know. You don't have to use this bit. I have no idea. I just thought it would be useful. Maybe it might be useful. So it's there. Boop. And I'm back. And that'll be it. I am not building one of those fucking builders. That seems like it takes way too goddamn long. Alright.